Welcome back to the Quest for Nine podcast presented by the Hoosier Network. As always, I'm Nick Abel. Just one other person joining me today.
Just me today.
Just the awe-inspiring Peter Miller. Peter, good to have you with us.
Well, great to be here as always. Missing my friend Owen next to me, but I'll manage.
He's used to having that chair with someone else in it, but we've got a lot to talk about today as Indiana soccer's got people scratching their heads. Last time we talked, it was ahead of a Northwestern match on the road on Halloween night that we talked about could get a little spooky. I don't think we thought it was going to be 2-0 spooky in favor of the Wildcats, Peter. Everything went wrong for Indiana.
It was truly Freaky Friday at its absolute worst if you're Indiana. Just a shock, really. Northwestern came into this game as 10th in the Big Ten standings, and we talked about it last week, just looking to maybe just get through these last few games and hopefully pick up something positive to take into next season. Well, they did that. They have put Indiana on the ropes, who now are in a must-win situation to make the Big Ten tournament. To be in position to even have a chance at that fourth and final spot right now is still, to me, a little baffling. After that loss to Northwestern, that really just should not have happened. But, you're still alive, and you take that, and you got to take that opportunity and do what you can with it. But just really a shocking result on the road. And we talked about it a little before we started recording. This team has struggled to win on the road, especially in conference play.
It has not been good on the road for Indiana. And we also looked at the stats that the IU athletic department sent out in the game notes. That loss was the first consecutive loss by the Indiana men's soccer team in 1 day less than 12 years. The last time they lost 2 consecutive matches was in November of 2013. 4,382 days. That is just not even fathomable as any sport. Like, ridiculous, shows the testament of what Todd Yeagley can do, but it puts him in a very unfamiliar spot right now at the end of the Big Ten season.
And it puts this team into this conversation of who are you?
Yeah.
Really? Because, we were sitting in this booth early in the season talking about, hey, is this team going to lose ever?
We didn't think they were going to lose.
And then here they are. They struggle, defensive struggles at points, and we were talking about it. Still don't have a clean sheet in a Big Ten game yet this season. Have really, really struggled to go on the road and beat teams like Northwestern and Michigan State, teams that they really should be beating. Granted, at home you've been playing really well, but so many missed opportunities this season for Indiana, and it's the position that they're in is their own doing, right? But to still have a chance to make it into the Big Ten tournament, given the way this season has gone, is just, I don't really know what to make of it, because you could even make the argument, Nick, that this team might not deserve to make any sort of postseason game, really, especially if they lose this regular season finale. So this year has been uncharacteristic of an Indiana men's soccer team, to say the least. The struggles usually come early. This season, the struggles have come late, and the struggles in conference play have just been, as you put it earlier, just head-scratching, really.
Yeah, it was a letdown of an October for a head coach that prides himself on his ability to win as the going gets tough, as the weather gets colder. But looking a little more into that Northwestern match, the 2-0 scoreline might not tell the entire story, because Indiana had a multitude of chances, just could not break in to find the back of the net. They outshot the Wildcats by 10. They had 8 more corner kicks. They had a majority of the possession, but the defense, again, and the inconsistent play in net. Now, it was Holden Brown who got the start, which we talked about last week was maybe not going to be the storyline, as Todd Yeagley would give given Judwell and Michelle an opportunity to prove himself in Big Ten play. And in the biggest match of the year at Maryland, he fell short. So Yeagley went back with the veteran goalkeeper on Holden Brown, who didn't look bad. Neither of the goals were his fault. Counterattacking transition defense was the red flag in that match. But it just puts an emphasis on the uncertainty in what going into the season looked like it was going to be the best part of the squad, or the most reliable. You knew what you were getting. You have Josh Mara, you have those veteran outside backs, and you went and got Ben Doe, and you went and got Victor Akum, but now it's a back line that's really in disarray.
It's just so befuddling, too, because there's so much depth on this back line.
Yeah.
So many different guys who could make different kinds of impacts on the outside and the center back spots. You would think that by now Todd Yeagley would have found that back four that he likes and relies on, but it just at this point it doesn't seem to be that way. Like early in the season, it seems like he had that group that he trusted, and then switched some things up at the beginning of conference play. It didn't quite work. You don't get some results, and you got to switch it up again, and now you're switching it up even more, and it's just confusing and a little concerning to me that you don't have that continuity yet, and that you really don't know with your season on the line, who is the back four that you're going to trust to go out there and keep a clean sheet and make the job of Holden Brown or Judwell and Michelle, whoever's in net, make their job easier, and keep the ball out of your half, play the possession style of game that you want to play, and keep it high up the pitch, and eventually get the ball to your talented attackers and get balls into the back of the net. It's, at this point, a little concerning that you really don't know who those four guys are going to be. So definitely something to look at going into this final regular season game. Todd Yeagley's got to figure it out.
Yeah, and I will say credit to Northwestern a little bit. They were so decisive on their counterattack and took advantage of a lot of opportunities. Holden Brown actually made a couple of really nice saves to keep it 2-0. But the big storyline offensively is that the Hoosiers couldn't really get the ball to Paul Morrell, and whether that was a credit to what the Wildcats were doing or just kind of, the spookiness of being on the road and playing at Halloween. It just kind of all mounted up into probably the worst loss of the year for Indiana, just based on the teams they've played and how they've looked.
Absolutely. And we touched on it too last week that, Northwestern's season is a bit of a write-off at this point, but they want to be able to go into the offseason with at least a little bit of optimism, so you can't take them lightly. There's no team in the Big Ten that you can take lightly. But this Hoosiers team goes into Evanston, and I'm not quite sure what it was, just struggled defensively, struggled to put the ball in the back of the net despite the many, many chances. Probably the better attacking team collectively, other than the fact that they didn't score goals, than the Wildcats were. And in the end, you give Northwestern that, sort of promise that they were looking for going into the offseason. And, at this point, there's nothing for the Wildcats to lose. And you knew that going in. You're the one with everything to lose, and you come out and it's just flat. I mean, it's at this point in the year, it's just really, it's not what you want to see, especially from a program of this pedigree.
And nobody really expected to see it either. With your backs up against the wall, fighting for a spot in the Big Ten tournament, everyone assumed, at least in this podcast and probably around the program and around the country, that Indiana was going to figure out it by the end, because their schedule was tougher towards the beginning of the Big Ten year. And then you ease into it outside of Maryland. You have a couple of games at the end of the year that should be winners, and you should be able to fight for that spot. Now, looking forward, where do the Hoosiers sit? And we kind of already touched on it. They currently are out of the Big Ten tournament. With the new format, only 4 teams make the tournament. It is Maryland on top after a ridiculous win against Washington, 1-0. That was a nail-biter of a match. A couple of interesting officiating calls that Washington probably didn't like gave them a 1-0 victory. So Maryland at the top with 23 points. Washington in second with 21. The Wolverines have locked up their spot in the Big Ten tournament with 19 points. And then the two teams fighting, UCLA currently in fourth with 14 points, a UCLA Bruins team that Indiana beat at home. And Indiana 2 points behind them, 4 and 5 in conference with 12 points. So what you need to happen against Rutgers Friday night is a win, and UCLA has to draw or lose. Fortunately for Indiana, UCLA has to play the Washington Huskies. So, Peter, we know what's in front of them. What do you even make of this table right now? It's just chaos.
I mentioned it earlier, the fact that Indiana is still alive, given how last week went on Halloween, it's honestly incredible for all the right and wrong reasons at the same time. Looking forward to this Rutgers game because we've seen at times from Todd Yeagley teams in the past that when they're in this kind of position and they're in a must-win scenario to stay alive and get 3 points when they need 3 points, they've generally been very good and generally been able to get those 3 points. This is a Rutgers team that has been struggling as of late, not in good form. Their last win was on senior night almost a month ago, October 10th. That was against Wisconsin. And then since then, lost to Maryland on the road, lost at home to Washington, 5-2 loss to UCLA on the road, and a draw against Michigan State. At this point, Rutgers isn't playing for much.
No.
But they are playing to end Indiana's season.
It's fun to play spoiler.
It is fun to play spoiler, and I think a stat that Rutgers is certainly looking at, and the Hoosiers got to be looking at too, is the fact that the visitors who will be coming to Bloomington on tomorrow, on Friday, don't have an away win yet this season. You don't necessarily want to have a 0 in that column going into the offseason. So if you're the Scarlet Knights, you're going to be hungry to get those 3 points on the road and at least give yourself a little bit of confidence going forwards into the offseason. But for Indiana, been very good at home this season. There is no time better than right now to defend home turf. Not just defend it, claim it, and take all 3 points and put the pressure on UCLA to go and take their spot in the tournament. Because with the UCLA draw, too, Indiana still makes the tournament. They're that fourth team because they hold the head-to-head.
Yep, they have the head-to-head, so a win and a draw.
They'd be tied on points. But so at that point, UCLA would have to do what Indiana does and take all 3 points. But as you mentioned, they're playing Washington. A team's also hungry.
And needs 3 points to potentially win.
To finish first in the Big Ten and win that regular season title and claim that first seed in the tournament. So this final match day of conference play has that feel of a Premier League match day 38 where you just wish every game was kicking off simultaneously, but do things a little differently here over in the States. It's going to be awesome to watch. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of drama.
Yeah, there should be a lot of drama. It's going to be a lot of fun. The Hoosiers would like to not have any drama. And the notes we should mention, we talked about the differences in being at home and being on the road. Indiana, 3-4 on the road, 8-1-1 at home. When they play at Bill Armstrong Stadium, they tend to win, and they tend to win very well. That one loss, a 3-2 loss to Michigan, where Palmer Alt had a penalty kick in the last minute to potentially get a draw. So that's the difference of being undefeated at home. But this is a different team. They are not used to losing 2 games in a row, as we've mentioned. And we talked about the defensive stats. The defensive stat we did not talk about, goals against for Indiana, they rank not in the top 25, not in the top 50, not in the top 75, not in the top 100. They are the 119th team in the country in goals against average per game, just over 1.4. So a big, big question mark for Todd Yeagley's squad going into not only Friday's match, potentially a Big Ten tournament match, and then, of course, the ultimate goal, which is the NCAA tournament, just a couple of weeks away here.
I'm really intrigued to see what kind of lineup Todd Yeagley goes with tomorrow. knowing that you need all 3 points. I think the front line, you can almost pencil in at this point. We know Pomerant's going to be playing. We know Collins Oduro is going to be out there. I'm sure we'll see a lot of Colton Swan as well. But that back line, as we mentioned, struggled to find that, I guess, combination that's worked and hasn't necessarily nailed down a starting goalkeeper yet. We thought earlier this season it was going to be Holden Brown to finish out the year, and no, we were wrong. And Jude Michelle comes in, plays well in a couple big games, but then has a couple mistakes against Maryland and loses his spot for the Northwestern game. So really interesting to see who he goes with in net tomorrow night, because Jude Michelle, other than that Maryland game, has started most of the big games this year and has done pretty well. Started in that opener of a draw against Clemson, 2-2 draw. Started in the win on the road against Kentucky, another ranked opponent. So really, really interested to see who they go with. And, Igley talks about it a bunch. They like both guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I guess, tomorrow, I'm not sure what necessarily is going to go into the decision, but it's going to be interesting to see what that decision is and how it plays out. Because if it doesn't work out so well, might be a question, hey, why didn't you go with this guy? And I don't think Todd Yeagley is going to want to answer those questions. But, Indiana's got to get those 3 points and starts from the back. Starts from the back, really does.
It is going to start from the back. Worth noting that the lineup looked a little bit different against Northwestern. You didn't have your typical number 9 starting in Colton Swan or Easton Bogard. They kind of had Alt in a more traditional number 9 role, which probably affected him in his ability to get to the ball, because you had they started Jacopo Federici, he's been on and off starter. You had added Charlie Hoyer and Clay Mirador. So it was a different lineup that they used against Northwestern. I wouldn't envision Todd Yeagley going back to that based on how they looked. But just something to note before they get into Rutgers. All right, let's get into prediction time. And maybe while we're at it, let's just go ahead and predict the Big Ten table, because who knows what happens there. Peter, if you want to start us off, obviously the match against Rutgers at 8 p.m. Friday night at Bill Armstrong Stadium. We assume it will be packed because it is potentially the last home game of the season, depending on what happens in the Big Ten Tournament if they make it and how RPI and all that nonsense falls. Currently, it's probably worth noting Indiana is hanging on by a thread in the top 10 and the top 25 of the soccer coaches poll. They're tied 25th with UMKC. Shout out to Kansas City over there. It's a good program, great medical school. And then they are not ranked in top drawer soccer. So just very stout difference from a team that was at one point were they number 1 in both of those polls?
They were the unequivocal undisputed number 1 team in the country. How the mighty have fallen.
And now Maryland sits at number 1.
Deserved for the Terrapins.
Very deserved in both of those polls. So Maryland, because they are 11-0-3, have not lost a match. And we know how close Indiana was beating, or was at least to drawing Maryland. So that's soccer for you, isn't it? All right, let's get into these predictions. Peter, you can kick us off. Well, how do you see that last match of the season going for Indiana, and maybe how the table shakes out?
Yeah, so you mentioned it, at home, at the Bill. Hopefully, for the sake of the game, we get an electric crowd. The Bill Armstrong Stadium's is no stranger to awesome crowds. If we've seen plenty of them this season, I'm sure we'll get a decent showing there again tomorrow night. For Indiana, I'm optimistic that, assuming Todd Yeagley doesn't overthink anything and goes with his overall best 11 at all positions, goalkeeper, back 4, in the midfield, and up top, I think those guys, with some help of a couple players coming off the bench, we're going to see the urgency necessary to go out and get 3 points and defend home turf. I'm going to say 1-0. I think this because of the stakes.
Shutout. Wow.
Because of the stakes, I think this is going to be a cagey game.
Sure.
And I've thought there was going to be cagey games this season, and I haven't been right with Indiana really yet. Whenever I seem to think it'll be a 0-0 or 1-0, we get
It's not
fireworks.
really this team's MO, is it?
No, not really. But I think with the stakes and what's at hand, Indiana wins to put the pressure on UCLA. By the way, as a side note, we mentioned that Michigan game and the Palmer out penalty at the end. That's the difference between controlling your own destiny tonight. Because if you get that point, all you need is a win. You don't got to rely on UCLA or Washington to help you out. But this is probably definitely the biggest game of the season in the Big Ten.
It has to be.
Probably one of the biggest regular season games in all of college soccer. UCLA making the trip up to Seattle. The Huskies have been really good at home this season, just like Indiana. They're 5-1-1 on their home field, and as we mentioned, they're looking to claim that regular season title and the number 1 overall seed in the tournament, and get a rematch against Indiana. Given if they get the win, which I do think they will. I think Indiana's going to feel lucky to see Washington defend home turf, pick up all 3 points at home. I'm going to say Washington is your Big Ten regular season champions.
How are you saying that happens?
And UCLA drops the ball and is unable to go on the road and get all 3 points. Oh, wait, shoot.
You're telling
I forgot about Maryland. I'm forgetting a game.
I mean, you're going to say they lose to
a game.
Michigan State?
No, I forgot. So that is on me. Maryland. I don't think there's a team in the country playing better than Maryland right now.
No.
So I think it's hard to say. Really to pick against them right now. So Maryland is your Big Ten regular season champion.
Try it again. Go to the editing.
And Washington, I'm going to say, finishes deservedly, or not necessarily deservedly, but comfortably in that second spot. Michigan, remains in that third spot. It doesn't look like there's any possible way they can move out of it.
Nope.
And the Hoosiers are the 4th and final team to make the tournament, so we'll get Indiana and Maryland in a rematch in the Big Ten tournament, and then Washington and Michigan, Wolverines against the Huskies. That's my predicted Big Ten tournament field.
All right. We had to do a redo there because Mr. Miller forgot that Maryland plays Michigan State, and they control their own destiny up 2 points with the tiebreaker over Washington, so all they need is a draw. And I think they get more than that in a comfortable win because then they get to go back home and host the Big Ten tournament. Their fans have been loving what the Terrapins have been doing all year, and they're going to keep loving what they're going to do in the postseason. So I think Maryland, as you said, stays on top. I don't see a reality where that's different. I think Washington and UCLA draw. Because and then with that tiebreaker, what happened between Washington and Michigan this year? This is bad podcasting. As a side note, Palmer Alt still is in first most goals in the country right now. Oh, okay. So here's what I'm going to have. I have Michigan coming in second in the Big Ten because they beat Washington this season. So they would have the tiebreaker. So a draw between Washington and UCLA would move them up, and the Hoosiers do get the job done at home. I think it's going to be not a cagey match, because why would it be with the team that's top 10 in scoring in the country and, as we said, 119th in goals allowed in the country. So I think it's probably a comfortable victory at home. I think Indiana gets on the board pretty early, probably 2 or 3 goals in the first half, but they do give up 1 because we have not seen them have a shutout and a clean sheet in a Big Ten match, and I don't think that continues Now, that would align them up to go back to Maryland, to have a chance to play the Terrapins, and to really have a chance to do something in the Big Ten championship. We would see where that would take them for the national tournament, currently in the RPI, which is kind of the metric that they look at for what you want to call it, strength of record. Indiana's still 9, so pretty good, thanks to their unreal non-conference play. But Indiana mostly has an opportunity to decide their own fate outside of a UCLA win over Washington. But then you get postseason play, and whatever happens, happens. Hoosiers looking for their first national championship since 2012. It's been their longest drought in program history.
It's been a long quest for 9, hasn't it?
Long quest for 9. And that will wrap up this episode of the Quest.
Can I throw in?
We got one more.
Throw in really
one
quick.
More. Hold on.
I mentioned how we wanted the feel of that match day 38 in the Premier League.
Yeah.
We're going to get it because Washington and UCLA kick off at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Rutgers and Indiana, 8 o'clock in Bloomington. Michigan State and Maryland, 8 o'clock as well. All those games will be going on simultaneously. I think we're going to get drama with a capital D-R-A-M-A.
Yeah. There we go. So that's good.